When Oppenheimer was stripped of his position of political influence in 1954, he symbolized for many the folly of scientists who believed they could control the use of their research, and the dilemmas of moral responsibility presented by science in the nuclear age. The hearings were motivated by politics and personal enmities, and also reflected a stark divide in the nuclear weapons community. One group viewed with passionate fear the Soviet Union as a mortal enemy and believed having the most powerful weaponry capable of providing the most massive retaliation was the best strategy for combating that threat. The other group felt that developing the H-bomb would not in fact improve the Western security position and that using the weapon against large civilian populations would be an act of genocide, and advocated instead a more flexible response to the Soviets involving tactical nuclear weapons, strengthened conventional forces, and arms control agreements. The first of these groups was the more powerful in political terms, and Oppenheimer became its target. Rather than consistently oppose the red baiting of the late 1940 and early 1950, Oppenheimer testified against some of his former colleagues and students, both before and during his hearing. In one incident, his damning testimony against former student Bernard Peters was selectively leaked to the press. Historians have interpreted this as an attempt by Oppenheimer to please his colleagues in the government and perhaps to divert attention from his own previous left-wing ties and those of his brother. In the end, it became a liability when it became clear that if Oppenheimer had really doubted Peters' loyalty, his recommending him for the Manhattan Project was reckless, or at least contradictory. Popular depictions of Oppenheimer view his security struggles as a confrontation between right-wing militarists, symbolized by Teller, and left-wing intellectuals, symbolized by Oppenheimer, over the moral question of weapons of mass destruction. The Oppenheimer story has often been viewed by biographers and historians as a modern tragedy. National Security Advisor and academic McGeorge Bundy, who had worked with Oppenheimer on the State Department panel of consultants, has written, quite aside from Oppenheimer's extraordinary rise and fall in prestige and power, his character has fully tragic dimensions in its combination of charm and arrogance, intelligence and blindness, awareness and insensitivity, and perhaps above all daring and fatalism. All these, in different ways, were turned against him in the hearings. The question of the scientist's responsibility toward humanity inspired Bertolt Brecht's drama Galileo, 1955, left its imprint on Friedrich Dürrenmatt's Die Physiker, and is the basis of the opera Dr. Atomic by John Adams, 2005, which was commissioned to portray Oppenheimer as a modern-day Faust. Heiner Kappardt's play in the matter of J. Robert Oppenheimer, after appearing on West German television, had its theatrical release in Berlin and Munich in October 1964. Oppenheimer's objections resulted in an exchange of correspondence with Kappardt, in which the playwright offered to make corrections but defended the play. It premiered in New York in June 1968, with Joseph Weisman in the Oppenheimer role. New York Times theater critic Clive Barnes called it an angry play and a partisan play that sided with Oppenheimer but portrayed the scientist as the tragic fool and genius. Oppenheimer had difficulty with this portrayal. After reading a transcript of Kappardt's play soon after it began to be performed, Oppenheimer threatened to sue the playwright, decrying improvisations which were contrary to history and to the nature of the people involved. Later Oppenheimer told an interviewer, "The whole damn thing, his security hearing, was a farce. And these people are trying to make a tragedy out of it. I had never said that I had regretted participating in a responsible way in the making of the bomb. I said that perhaps he, Kupfart, had forgotten Guernica, Coventry, Hamburg, Dresden, Dachau, Warsaw, and Tokyo, but I had not, and that if he found it so difficult to understand, he should write a play about something else. Oppenheimer is the subject of numerous biographies, including American Prometheus, The Triumph and Tragedy of J. Robert Oppenheimer, 2005, by Kai Bird and Martin J. Sherwin, which won the Pulitzer Prize for Biography or Autobiography for 2006. The 1980 BBC TV serial Oppenheimer, starring Sam Waterston, won 3 BAFTA Television Awards. The Day After Trinity, a 1980 documentary about Oppenheimer and the building of the atomic bomb, was nominated for an Academy Award and received a Peabody Award. Oppenheimer's life is also explored in Tom Morton Smith's 2015 play Oppenheimer, and in the 1989 film Fat Man and Little Boy, where he was portrayed by Dwight Schultz. Also in 1989, David Strathairn played Oppenheimer in the made-for-TV movie Day One. In the 2023 American film Oppenheimer, directed by Christopher Nolan and based on American Prometheus, Oppenheimer is portrayed by actor Cillian Murphy. A centennial conference and exhibit were held in 2004 at Berkeley, with the proceedings of the conference published in 2005 as Reappraising Oppenheimer, Centennial Studies and Reflections. His papers are in the Library of Congress. As a scientist, Oppenheimer is remembered by his students and colleagues as being a brilliant researcher and engaging teacher who was the founder of modern theoretical physics in the United States. Because his scientific attentions often changed rapidly, he never worked long enough on any one topic and carried it to fruition to merit the Nobel Prize. Although his investigations contributing to the theory of black holes may have warranted the prize, had he lived long enough to see them brought into fruition by later astrophysicists. An asteroid, 67085 Oppenheimer, was named in his honor on January 4, 2000, as was the lunar crater Oppenheimer in 1970. As a military and public policy advisor, Oppenheimer was a technocratic leader in a shift in the interactions between science and the military and the emergence of big science. During World War II, scientists became involved in military research to an unprecedented degree. Because of the threat fascism posed to Western civilization, they volunteered in great numbers both for technological and organizational assistance to the Allied effort, resulting in such powerful tools as radar, the proximity fuse and operations research. As a cultured, intellectual, theoretical physicist who became a disciplined military organizer, Oppenheimer represented the shift away from the idea that scientists had their head in the clouds, and that knowledge on such previously esoteric subjects as the composition of the atomic nucleus had no real-world applications. 2 days before the Trinity test, Oppenheimer expressed his hopes and fears in a quotation from Bhartari's Satakatre.